we have produced something that I think will provide the guidance that the community, the Land Council and the government seeks in relation to what the next steps are for treaty in the Northern Territory. It's more of a series of guideposts on one path to get to a treaty outcome in the Northern Territory that is fair and equitable and responsive to community desires. It's difficult at this early stage to be too directive in the way things ought to be done, because ideally the First Nations position will be put by First Nations, not by an appointed treaty commissioner. The next steps following the delivery of my report to the Minister for Treaty and Local Decision Making today will be for the Minister to release the report in due course. The legislation provides that it must be publicly released within 21 days of delivery to the Minister. I suspect that for some people it will be controversial. What the treaty process is about is trying to find a place for First Nations, Aboriginal peoples in this country, and in this case in the Northern Territory, which is more equitable, which is fairer, which allows for Aboriginal people to be in control of their own circumstances. And for the Territory, that necessarily involves a transfer of some power. And when there's a transfer of power, the power has to come from somewhere. Ultimately, the government is going to have to decide the way in which it responds to my recommendations and how it engages in this process. But I'm reasonably confident that the government will take some action. What action it takes, I'm not sure. This process of engaging in settlement agreements between First Nations people and the colonial government, it's an attempt to rectify some of the terrible injustices that have occurred over the last 150 years, or 180 years in the Northern Territory. These things are not the type of things that should be rushed. But I'll say this: with the change of government federally and the very prominent commitment by the new federal government to the establishment of a McAvoy commission dealing with treaty making and truth telling, the opportunity exists politically for the Northern Territory and for Victoria and Queensland and the other places in Australia which are engaged in treaty making, in some understanding that things need to change. I think that if the land councils and the government and the native title bodies give the process their support and they're happy with the recommendations, then that will have a much greater impact on the success or otherwise of the treaty process than having a continuity in the form of the treaty commissioner. But I think that there is something to be said for continuity and maintenance of momentum.